Oh my gosh, my Nintendo Switch 2 Direct hype levels have just shot up dramatically. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and I'm not kidding. The level of excitement I've had for the Switch 2 Direct has already been high, but as of earlier today, they just went to a whole other level. Why? Because something has been said about Metroid Prime 4, and that has led to my hype levels going to an even greater level than expected. But when you also think about other things beyond Metroid Prime 4 and you look at the overall picture, then I think that provides even more reason for a great deal of excitement for the Nintendo fan, and that's what I want to get into today. But before going forward, let me point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and hit that notification bell. So it is this post by Reese Kiwi Talks Riley on Twitter from earlier today that has led to my increased excitement. For those that don't know Kiwi Talks, they are a content creator, a game developer interviewer. They have interviewed many different developers such as devs from Retro Studios, Valve, and Bethesda, some of the best developers in the industry. Here is their YouTube channel. Both their Twitter and their YouTube will be linked in the description below. Many amazing interviews. We've gotten some really interesting details about Metroid from these interviews. So Kiwi Talks definitely has a clear public record of connections and networking with so many different developers in the industry, and they have spoken to different Retro Studios developers. So when they say something definitively about Metroid, I think it's absolutely worth paying attention to. They would possibly be privy to some very interesting information about the game. And so what Kiwi Talks is saying is this: in less than a month, in the Switch 2 Direct, you'll see that Nintendo and Retro were keeping their cards close to their chest with Metroid Prime 4 for this exact moment. The true unveiling will blow everything else in the Direct out of the water. So let's make sure we understand what's being said here clearly. He is talking about Nintendo and Retro Studios is a part of Nintendo, how they've been holding back on Metroid Prime 4 for this moment, for this Switch 2 Direct. I've already been talking about on the channel how I do think that Nintendo has clearly been saving Metroid Prime 4 for the Direct, and they are going to show off some impressive things about this game starting on April 2nd. But it's this next part here that really sends me through a great wave of excitement. The true unveiling will blow everything else in the Direct out of the water. So when he says true unveiling, he's not talking about the true unveiling for the Switch 2. He's talking about the true unveiling of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And this post right here, coming from this person who has credibility, who has a lot of contacts, and would be privy to some very exciting information about Metroid, but wouldn't say it publicly, and could maybe say something like this. This is the kind of thing that now sends my mind spiraling in all sorts of exciting directions. This is something that I've wanted to believe. Of course, many people have tried to push me back and quell my joy, because many people don't want to believe in Metroid. But I do believe in Metroid. I do think that it's special, and I also think Nintendo thinks it's special, and they want to do something very special here. Some points we've brought up in the past. The Metroid series, specifically the Metroid Prime series, is one of the most critically acclaimed series there ever have been. The original Metroid Prime on Nintendo GameCube is literally one of the highest rated games of all time. Metroid Prime Remastered on the Nintendo Switch is one of the highest rated games in the entire generation. And that was just a remaster. Yet when we look at that remaster, the quality of work done for this remastering pretty much blows everything else out of the water in terms of visual fidelity on the Nintendo Switch. The technology that Retro Studios demonstrated with this game and what they could do on just the Switch, it's superb. and we look at the last and perhaps final big general direct about Just Switch 1, the final game in a presentation that had a new Mario & Luigi game, a new 2D Zelda, a new big Mario Party game. The closer was Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And I do think that is Nintendo sending a few messages. One message: this game is a big deal, perhaps a bigger deal than everything else in this presentation. And two, this is a teaser for the future. Because that trailer is impressive. A lot of people thought it was Switch 2 footage. It's not Switch 2 footage, it is Switch 1 footage, but I think that goes to show just how impressive what they've already shown is. Yet, it is a short trailer that only shows some very small pieces of the game. And so we really know very little about Metroid Prime 4. They have been keeping Metroid Prime 4 close to their chest, and it looks like in this Switch 2 Direct, we're going to see something about this game that's going to reveal to the world just how big of a deal it actually is. And for those who are perhaps not on the same wavelength as me when it comes to Metroid, let me just try and give you an example to just sort of show you how excited and full of belief I am in this game. Imagine if we were about to get a new 3D Zelda game. Like a brand new 3D Zelda game that Nintendo's been working on for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That's pretty much where I'm at with this. But what is it about Metroid Prime 4 that leads to Kiwi Talk saying that this game is going to blow everything else in the Direct out of the water? This Direct is going to have other exciting things. It's going to have the next generation Mario Kart, likely going to have the next 3D Mario. These games might blow me out of the water, but Metroid Prime 4 supposedly is going to be even bigger than that, at least according to Kiwi Talks, and I'm sure there's some opinion involved here, but I do think there's something behind this. There's something here that's not just, oh yeah, I'm more of a Metroid fan than a Mario fan. I think they're saying this for a reason. And so what is that reason? Well, the first thing I jump to is that, yes, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond absolutely is a cross-generation title. It's not just going to be playable on Switch 2 thanks to backwards compatibility, but there will be enhancements. We've already talked about how they have this very interesting mouse control feature that would work really well for a first-person shooter or adventure like Metroid Prime 4, so I do think likely that will be there. But also I think there is an implication here that there's going to be some visual improvements, and perhaps these visual improvements are not light visual improvements, but significant ones. Perhaps Retro Studios and Nintendo have been working on Metroid Prime 4 with not just Switch 1 in mind for some time, but both. And if that's the case, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond could have a cross-generation version that represents itself well. But you know, I kind of feel like this comment goes beyond just controller functionality and very solid visual improvements to an already visually impressive game. I think it also goes back to just the game itself, how it will play, what it's going to do. I don't think this game is just going to be a follow-up to Metroid Prime 3. I think they are going to do something special with this game. I do think this is going to be an evolution for the series. They are going to go beyond. But what does that mean exactly? And that's a tough question to answer. I guess we'll see when we finally get this unveiling, this true unveiling of Metroid Prime 4 in the Switch 2 Direct that will blow everything else in the presentation out of the water, apparently. I imagine that the worlds are going to be vast, not necessarily open world, but vast and greatly interconnected, with a lot of really intriguing gameplay interactions. Perhaps they will be speeding up Samus's movement. Perhaps there'll be different attacks and tricks Samus can do that are impressive. Imagine some of the things we've seen Samus do in the 2D Metroid games, but put that into the 3D space for a first-person shooter adventure. I think that could change a lot. A couple days ago, I did talk about the trailer for Metroid Prime 4 and how exciting it may be. Perhaps they are going to go in on the story here. There's going to be some significant voice acting in parts. There will still be a great deal of isolation. But the narrative that may be told could be something that may be very appealing to a large audience. And so there could be several different ways that this game may prove to be a very big deal. So thank you, Kiwi Talks, for increasing my hype levels significantly when it comes to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I am so ready for this. But I do want to point out a few other things here. Yes, Mario Kart also seems extremely likely to be in the Direct, and the idea of Mario Kart and Metroid Prime 4 are both exciting things. We know at least a little bit about both of these games, and I have entertained the idea that maybe both can be launch titles. And that may seem kind of crazy, but when we think about maybe Nintendo actually treating Metroid Prime 4 like a big deal, maybe they might be so truly bold to use both together as the ultimate launch combination. We are hearing reports that the Switch 2 is supposed to have the largest launch in console gaming history, 6 to 8 million units worldwide. That would be significant, and a huge launch like that might actually be the kind of launch where Nintendo would think, hey, maybe we should put out 2 big hitters day one. And I have talked about in the past how if you look at the history of Nintendo console launches, they always have 2 or 3 first-party titles. Now, those 2 or 3 first-party titles, they're not always all big hitters. Those second or third titles are usually smaller. So a combo of Mario Kart and Metroid Prime 4, I will say right now, I think would be unprecedented, but analysts are saying that this launch is going to be unprecedentedly large. And so that just gets me even more excited about what may be going on, and we've already talked about my theory about a May 15th launch. It is a theory at the end of the day, it may not end up being true, but it seems like more and more evidence is mounting to support this idea. Regardless, it looks like Switch 2 is coming out relatively soon, if not May, June, and that's close. That's very close. So the closer we get to the Switch 2 Direct and the eventual launch of the console and these amazing games, the more my excitement is going to build. I'm recording this less than 19 days away from April 2nd, when we're going to have this big presentation. But there's a few other things I'm going to mention here. 3D Mario just has to be in this presentation too, you would think, right? At least a glimpse. I'm not expecting a giant trailer for this game, but at least a glimpse, because I would have to think that if they're going to launch the console with something like Mario Kart, then 3D Mario would have to be saved for the holidays. If Switch 2 is indeed coming out May or June of this year, come October, November, then Nintendo's going to want to have another major Mario release, and 3D Mario makes so much sense. There's a long history of 3D Mario coming out in that first year for any new console from Nintendo, and given that it's also Mario's 40th anniversary, and the next big Mario movie is coming out next year for April, it just makes sense for us to at least get a look at that. However, there is another point I want to speak on when it comes to Mario here, because Kiwi Talks is saying that the true unveiling of Metroid Prime 4 will blow everything else in the Direct out of the water, and I guess that would also include 3D Mario then. And I do have a little bit of a problem with that. Now, I hold Metroid Prime 4 to a high level of regard. It's Game of the Year level, if not greater, to me. But I think the same can be said for 3D Mario. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sure some opinion is involved with what Kiwi Talks is saying here. I think it's rooted in things he's heard about the game, and his belief in what Retro's going to pull off. But it also may be somewhat skewed by his preference in Metroid vs. Mario. I don't know what his opinion on the matter is, I'm simply basing this off the statement. But it also might be the case that perhaps something like this can be said, and you could still hold Mario in similar regard as Metroid, but the difference here is that Metroid is going to get more of a fuller showcase because it is coming out sooner, and 3D Mario will just be a glimpse in this presentation because it's probably not coming out until the holidays. But there is another title that I have great anticipation for, and this title may not even exist. This title may not be in the Direct, but I think there is reason to believe it might be. Now, we've heard that Monolith Soft has been working on a new IP, and they've been working on this new IP since 2017. They had a hiring page for this project since 2017 and only recently took it down to put up a new hiring page for a new RPG project. And this project that they've been supposedly hiring for throughout the entire Switch era has some amazing concept art. But what's also interesting about this is that there are code names for different Nintendo games that were leaked last year from Midori. Some of them have already been proven true, like the codename for the Switch 2 itself, Ounce, and also Banquet, which was for Super Mario Party Jamboree, and Edward for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, which seems to imply that the others likely have some validity, and one of them is a project named Legacy, which is a Monolith Soft project. And while we are getting Xenoblade Chronicles X this month, in less than a week from now actually, This legacy project might also not be so far off, because if these other codename projects ended up being things that are coming out really soon, perhaps all these codename projects were things that were meant to be really soon. And so maybe Monolith Soft is getting their next game ready if they have been working on it throughout this entire Switch era. In other words, they could actually be prepared to have 2 games come out in fairly close proximity to each other within 12 months. We might see this new IP early on in the Switch 2 generation, so we'll have a great boost there, and it could show up in the Direct as well. And I could talk about other things that may lead to a very exciting presentation. Obviously, the console itself, a variety of big third-party games. Recently, we talked about the possibility of us seeing maybe an Oblivion remake in the Switch 2 Direct. And there's always the possibility that Nintendo is going to tell us something about Zelda, and that's going to send me through the roof. But what we've heard about Metroid Prime 4 alone has already sent me through the roof. I'm actually recording this on the very top of my house. That's not true, but metaphorically speaking, it is. So I'm excited. My hype levels are at an all-time high here. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is gonna be amazing. We are in for a masterpiece, and I can't wait to see it in the Switch 2 Direct. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.